We went to Halton-with-Aughton, me and Jeannie McIntosh, the former of which coupling, i.e. Halton, being a crumbling eclectic mix of architectural curios, arranged like capillaries on either side of the main artery running from the rump of Lancaster, or the head if you prefer, depending on which way up you're holding the map. The latter, i.e. Orton, being a picturesque flea-bite of a village, halfway down the northern flank of the Lune Valley that you'd more expect to find snoring deep within the Cotswolds. Let's dump the poetry and deal with the Halton bit first. There's a Motte and Bailey, or the remains of one, tucked away behind the War Memorial at Halton. If you don't already know about this stuff, Motte and Baileys were large defensive earthworks, constructed and peopled by the invading Norman armies almost 1,000 years ago, to terrorise any potential local militants into submission. Generally, they had wooden towers on their summits. This one has a flagpole. Halton Castle, as the locals call it, stands, or rather stood because there's nothing left of the buildings themselves nowadays, on private land, which is why our footage of it is somewhat limited. Around the corner, overlooking the rest of the village with its sense of ancient superiority, stands St. Wilfrid's, a grade 2 listed 7th century church, the tower of which dates from Tudor times, and the rest of which, with the usual reckless abandon, was demolished and rebuilt in the Victorian era, the 1870s, to a design by the architects Paley and Austin to be exact. Sectioned off from the public, presumably because the structure is unsafe nowadays. There seems to be a lot of that sort of thing in Halton, as this dangerous tumble-down ruin, hanging ominously over the main road, demonstrates, is the austere and frankly bloody creepy classical Romanesque burial vault of the Bradshaw family. Unnoticed by the church historians, there's also a sundial close by the 16th century porch, the base of which appears to be Norse. More impressively, however, just south of the church stands a carved Anglo-Saxon high cross, proudly defying the ravages of time on its 3 moss-encrusted sandstone steps, with its 11th century shaft depicting, according to those who know this sort of stuff, the legend of Sigurd, or Siegfried, if you're that way inclined, a Norse-Germanic hero famous for his prowess at slaying dragons. Look it up. Life's too short to repeat it here. Well, when I say Anglo-Saxon and 11th century, the various historians we consulted have recorded it as Norse, Saxon and or Norman, so it's anybody's guess as to its true origins. Whatever the case, it's extremely bloody old. At about this juncture, me and Jeannie McIntosh got bored of Halton, so we took the car for a quick spin up the road to Orton instead, which, according to a warning sign displayed on a gate, contains dangerous donkeys on special diets that kick and bite interlopers. Orton isn't so much a sleepy Lancashire village as a comatose hamlet that could easily be mistaken for an ink stain on the map. Regardless of its diminutive stature and relative obscurity, it does, however, have the distinction, in the Guinness Book of Records no less, so it's all authentic, for creating the largest pudding in the world, Eric Pickles notwithstanding. The Orton Pudding Festival, believed to date back to 1782, is held once every 21 years. Honestly, we've no idea why either, when the titular gigantic plum pudding is baked by local volunteers as the centrepiece for a weekend of celebrations, cooking utensils ranging from an old tin bath to a concrete mixer. Once, back in the mists of history, or so we read somewhere, the alcohol-fueled celebrations became a bit raucous, and the oven was neglected. As a result, the pudding was overcooked and needed to be broken up with pickaxes. And that's about it for Orton. If you have any further information, please let us know through the usual channels, and we'll do our best to include it in a future episode. Possibly. In the meantime, me and Jeannie McIntosh were now stuck for places to visit in this neck of the woods that we hadn't already covered extensively. So we thought we'd take a look at the legendary Crook Lune picnic site, fortuitously sandwiched between Halton and Orton. In 1818, J.M.W. Turner, who presumably had been hitting the bottle rather heavily that afternoon, painted a not particularly accurate watercolour of the view, uninventively entitled Crook of Lune looking towards Hornby Castle, half of which he made up for artistic licence, but what more could you expect of Timothy Spall? This local beauty spot has also been captured in literature by such famous wordsmiths as Thomas Gray, William Wordsworth and, for some unfathomable reason, William Wilberforce. There's a butty shop stroke cafe at the Crook of Lune picnic site, or at least there usually is. It was closed the afternoon we turned up with our stomachs rumbling. The pay and display machine for the car park wasn't working either, so swings and roundabouts. The Crook of Lune, referring to the hairpin bend in the River Lune being shaped like a shepherd's stroke bishop's crook, in case you hadn't realised, is crossed by two viaducts that, back in the 19th century, long before Dr. Beeching stuck his oar in, carried the Little North Western Railway over the river. Said railway was closed and removed in 1967, and the bridges themselves, complete with benches for weary ramblers to rest their posteriors on, now form part of a spectacularly long-distance footpath and cycleway. Alongside the viaduct, less than an enthusiastic flea's jump away, runs the equally impressive Grade 2 listed road bridge built in 1806. Back in the 19th century it was known as Penny Bridge because of the toll charged by its owners. Fortunately nowadays the Crook of Lune picnic site has public loos if you want to spend a penny. I need more coffee, obviously that joke wasn't even remotely amusing. A plethora of public footpaths, riverside walks and educational trails, meandering through a somnambulant sheep, explode like blood clots around the Crook of Lune. Most of them were covered with autumnal drifts of slimy decaying leaves, made all the more treacherous by an infestation of black spot the afternoon that we were there. We also discovered another one of those markers following the route that the Pendle witches took on their way to Lancaster Castle. One of these days we'll have to compile them into a standalone episode, but not this one. We've had enough now. Click like if you want, subscribe if you're that way inclined, but whatever you do, don't forget to join us for the next intriguing episode of Lancashire Footnotes.